Ape-men have long been the stuff of science fiction. For years, Hollywood movies have portrayed them in living color. I'm sure you've seen the depiction of a monkey progressively turning into an upright human figure, evolution from monkey to man. But what proof do we have supporting these artists' depictions? Let's find out what the real evidence is and why people trying to fit ape-men into Genesis are seriously mistaken. Coming up on today's edition of Origins, Human Evolution Demolished with Dr. Jerry Bergman. Hello, welcome to Origins. I'm Ray Heiple. During this program, we showcase interesting guests who present evidence from science along with other important facts validating the truth of creation and the accuracy of the Bible. Today's guest, Dr. Jerry Bergman, has 9 degrees, including 2 PhDs in the area of science. He is a scientist, public speaker, and as a college professor has taught for over 4 decades. He is also an award-winning author of over 60 books, and his work has been translated into 14 languages. Jerry holds the distinction of being our first guest on the Origins TV program, which premiered in 1985. Welcome to the program, Jerry.
Thank you very much.
We are going to be looking at human evolution.
Right. When we talk about evolution, we're really usually not worried about the evolution of clams or mollusks. We're concerned about humans primarily. Why is this important? Well, Christianity Today is surveying and found 30% of young people, 18 to 35, left the Bible and Christianity because of science. What they learned in science, specifically evolution, is why they left. What is evolution? Well, we start out with fish, and you can see we are evolving to finally we get to tetrapods, primates, and humans. So from fish to humans, where is the beliefs of the major denominations in this area? Well, ironically, the group that has the highest acceptance of creation was Jehovah's Witnesses. Only 8% accept evolution. Mormons, 22%, historical black Protestant, 38%, Muslims, 45%, all the way up to Buddhists, 81% accept human evolution. So it's a major concern in many organizations. And this specifically is a chart of those who accept evolution, and that is the major, like United Methodist, the Lutheran Church, the Mainline, etc. So the major Protestant denominations accept that worldview. The other denominations do not. The result of rejection, as you can see in this headline, is that less than half of Americans now are members of houses of worship. Again, the central reason is evolution. The scriptures are very clear. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female, he created them. Very clear, unequivocal. Acts 17:26, he had made from one blood, one man of all nations to dwell on the surface of the earth. And there we go. There is Adam and Eve, according to the biblical story. Now, what does evolution teach? Evolution teaches that our common ancestor was monkeys, and you can see there's a huge morphological difference between monkeys and humans. Obviously, even on a dark night, a few feet away, no problem distinguishing the difference. Faces, obviously, very, very different. Somebody said, wait a minute, you got a blonde, blue-eyed girl, not fair. Okay, fine. We have therefore a dark-complected, brown-eyed, dark-haired girl, still a huge difference between her and a monkey's. What about certain people like microcephaly? People who have microcephaly is a disease where the brain does not develop. Well, still, yes, there are slight similarities, but still, even a 3-year-old could tell the difference between this person and an ape. When I looked on the internet trying to find the most ape-looking man, I found this guy. Still, huge difference between him and, you can see, an ape. And then other traits were found. For example, only, believe it or not, only humans can smile. The reason is that we have the muscles to be able to smile, and there's quite a few involved, where monkeys do not. They can grimace, but they cannot smile. Interesting differences. And there are many, many others, and I just picked one. In fact, we have 50 facial muscles that allow us to express scores of emotions, including smiling, giggling, and so on. Apes have fewer than 30. Here's an interesting difference between us and apes. We have whites of the eyes, where apes do not. Whites of the eyes allow us to know what we are looking at. In teaching, you know whether they're looking at you or something else by the whites of the eyes, where apes do not have that. Now, you can see when they try to draw an ape that looks human-like, one thing they do, in this case, all they did was add the whites of the eye, which is not there in the picture, but they photoshopped that to do that. Now, skull-wise, human, chimp, obvious, major, major difference. X-ray in the same skulls, major, major, more differences is very, very apparent. Brain size, obviously our brain is much larger. Well, hopefully, for most people, it's much larger. When we look at the differences, we see human, 1378 on average, chimps, 399. Mammoth difference in size. When we look at the throat structure, again, many, many differences. This is why humans, and only humans, can talk because of these differences. Many major differences. Now, I know some birds do a pretty good job, but as far as I know, no bird is well, some are pretty good, actually. But no bird, no animal can become even close to humans. Skeletal differences, obvious. If you're in the field of forensics, you know within a few minutes whether this skeleton parts are from a human or whether they're from an ape. Clear differences. Jaws, even major differences. And this is one quote, "There's not much difference between a gorilla and a human," end of quote. Not much difference. Come on. A 6-month-old baby, I think, could tell the difference. Very, very clear. And when we look at feet, primates have not 2 feet and 2 hands, but 4 feet. The reason they have 4 feet is it really helps in climbing trees. And they literally have 4. We don't call them 4 feet. We say they have 2 hands, but the hands are really feet, morphologically. And there we can see the human foot compared to the ape foot. Very, very different because, again, climbing trees makes all the difference. We are bipedal, they are quadrupedal, and this means the whole skeleton is drastically different because of how we walk.
Could you take us up to the board and show us some more?
Yeah. And when you examine the examples, again, what we see is differences in skulls, but the bodies are pretty much the same from here to here. And these are among the most common examples used to prove human evolution. And here is one of the best examples in history, which was seen as a link between us and less evolved creatures. What do we find? It could be your ancestor because they look just like us. So again, as time goes on, we realize that so many of these claimed examples are really, hey, there's a lot of variety we see in life, especially in humans, and you can find humans that look somewhat ape-like. You all know people who look that way. One thing that bothers me, though, is distortions, and this is a good example. This right here is Australopithecus, supposed to be our evolutionary ancestor. Okay, where did they get that idea from? They got it, ironically, from living primates, but infants, children. And we can see here, this is obviously the example that was used to draw this right here. And there you can see the difference between the infant or young ape and the adult is enormous. So in the early stages of development, we find that many apes have very human-like traits. And this is a good example. Almost looks like a baby. Yeah, they did at that time, but still, there are still obviously major differences which are greater as they mature. And we can see this example right here. How do we get from this to a human? Well, they do it by comparing genetics. And this can be done if you have the right tools. Ironically, a lot of this information is online. If you have the right tools, a blast analysis they call this, you can make comparisons between chimp DNA and human DNA. And done that, and we notice that there are huge differences. Specifically, out of the 3 billion base pairs, we find that the difference is about 15%. Now, 15% is 450 million base pair differences. And so that is enormous difference between us and apes. Well, what does that mean? How do they go from one to the other? Believe it or not, by mutations. That is now the accepted belief relative to how we went from apes to humans by mutations. The problem is we know a lot about mutations. I worked in medical school doing research on mutations. We know a lot about how they occur and what they do. Now we know that the vast majority of mutations either have no or a minor effect, or they cause disease. Thousands of diseases are caused by mutations. In fact, we know that diseases are caused by either inheritance, mutational damage. Most birth defects are mutational damage. The only other causes of disease are pathogens, diet, and toxins. So basically, a major cause of disease is mutations. We know that. We know a lot about mutations because we do work on them to understand disease. And a few statements from the leading evolutionists are very clear. Ultimately, all variation is due to mutations. And Debunking said, mutation is the only source of the raw materials and hence of evolution. There we go. The problem is they are all problematic mutations. You rarely get, now I'm not saying never, you rarely get improvement through mutations.
And they need 450 million
differences.
Improvements.
The right ones,
yeah.
Not the wrong ones. Okay, to show you the importance of mutations, this was Hermann Muller. He discovered that X-rays increase mutation rates. He put fruit flies in an X-ray machine, bombarded them, and found they indeed do increase the level of mutations. And because of this discovery, as this article says, we now, new discovery, speeds up evolution. So we can encourage, push evolution by putting you and I, well, actually our wife or us when we're young, before we have children, in an X-ray machine, increasing the mutation rate. Now today, you mention that in any crowd of average people, they say that's ridiculous because mutations cause cancer. We know that. Well, ironically, this man got the Nobel Prize, the most honored prize in science, for this discovery that mutations can speed up evolution. In fact, he said in his announcement, his speech, when he was given the prize, that now we can finally apply Darwinism and we can speed up mutations. Now, I know when you say that today, people say, come on, that's ridiculous. When I go to the doctor and have an X-ray done, they cover parts of my body with lead shields. The nurse leaves the room when she turns on the machine because we know mutations are harmful. Yet how in the world can they believe the source of genetic change is mutations? But they do. They do. But what other explanation do they have? And this is a picture I took from a book of evolution for beginners. And they said right here very clearly, no mutation, no evolution. Mutations are random, okay? And they mention that most mutations are a problem. In fact, beneficial mutations are rare. So it's not hidden. It's in the books that talk about evolution. I use these pictures because they're nice and clear and straight. Most books, they'll give you a chapter on each of these ideas. And therefore, when we look at mutations, we know a lot, as I said, because I worked in this area in cancer, and we know a problem is we get mutations in what they call hotspots. Over and over and over, we get mutations in the same place. Well, you can see, thinking about this, you'll never get mutational changes to improve things because you got the same breakage in the same place.
Jerry, I have to stop you right there. We need to take a break. We'll be right back after these messages. Stay with us.
We hope you're enjoying Origins TV. It all started at Cornerstone Television in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We've been producing new episodes for over 37 years now. We praise God for the success of the program and are excited to introduce you to Origins and to us. If you're interested in watching more episodes of Origins, you can find them on our YouTube page. Simply go to YouTube and search Cornerstone Television Network. Click the like and subscribe buttons, then you'll find the best episodes of Origins in our playlist. You can also visit our website at ctvn.org/origins. One more way you can stay connected with us is to subscribe to our free monthly Hope Today newsletter, which you can do from our website. And if you have any questions, call us here at Cornerstone Television at 888-665-4483. We'd love to connect with you. Thank you for watching.
Welcome back to Origins. We're talking to Dr. Jerry Bergman, who has been demolishing the theory of evolution, and I'm very glad that you are, because it is a very harmful theory indeed.
Very harmful. One thing that interests me is that it is racist, clearly, and I have lots of books I've written which deal with this. And I'm from Detroit, so I grew up with a number of different ethnic groups, and that's just part of my world. This is a good example. This is from a German book, the same thing as in the English book. But you can see 3 primates here, and right here in the lower corner you can see from the German it's I-E-G-E-R. Obviously, without saying a word, you can see where the blacks are put in that chart. And the 1962 edition from Life magazine, we can see the same thing focused on. You can see the very ape-like but yet very negroid type drawing. Indoctrination is very important in why so many people accept human evolution. By 1928, 375 U.S. colleges were teaching eugenics, and this biology book right here is one example. And we can see that basically today, same thing in the Webster case, ironically from this state, the Webster case, the courts ruled public school teachers must teach evolution as prescribed by the curriculum. This overrides their First Amendment rights as a private citizen. We can see the pervasiveness, and a good example is one of my grandsons, who's Catholic, went to a Catholic school. He wanted to go to Notre Dame. So we visited Notre Dame, and looking in the library and the bookstore, I discovered lots of books on evolution, several books against creation, no book for creation. And so and I knew this already, so we can see that they teach evolution as fact. Same thing among Protestant schools. This is Wheaton College. I spoke a number of times in Wheaton, Illinois, and they have the same basic philosophy. They're less aggressive about it, but on the other hand, they teach evolution as fact. And so even among Christian colleges, you can see that this is the case.
Wow, that's a shame.
One book, which is interesting, written by an atheist, Jerry Coyne, University of Chicago, and he said, basically, in this book, he documented that you cannot consistently accept the Bible, creation, and evolution. When I present some of this material, people ask, hey, wait a minute, the evidence is overwhelming against human evolution. How can people believe it? Well, there's a book written by Norman Geisler and Frank Turek, and they said, I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. If you think about it, it takes a lot of faith to believe that mutations can accumulate and convert apes into man.
That's right. The facts are on our side, on the Bible side, on the creation story side. They're not on the the evolutionary side.
Clearly, and my own experience was I at one time was involved in the atheist movement, and I became a Christian by studying science. In fact, I wrote a book on this saying that science is the doorway to Christianity. Now yet, unfortunately, if we had the churches on our side, it would make things a lot easier. But the churches are only trying to conform what they believe is scientific uniformity. Article in the Toledo Blade, which is the newspaper near where I live in Toledo, and they had this whole article on spare parts. We have all these spare parts. What's going on? And they say that, well, this is not evidence of creation, but this is evidence of evolution. Now, they don't say this directly, but they imply this. So, because I've written several books on this topic, I wrote the Blade a letter and said, I teach anatomy, taught anatomy for 20-some years. Not a single anatomy book that I used taught the idea that we have vestigial organs. And I demonstrated that by quotes, examples, and they called me, so I know they got the letter. And guess what? They never printed my letter. And to me, it's a matter of fact. How about court decisions? Well, the court decision in the case in Pennsylvania, they basically said that it's wrong, quote, plaintiffs' scientific experts testified the theory of evolution is overwhelmingly accepted by the scientific community, and, the judge concluded, it in no way conflicts with nor denies the existence of a divine creator. Well, we know that that simply is not true at all. And what they're doing really is trading one religion in the schools for another. A religion's actually a worldview. It tells us where we came from, why we're here, and where we're going. Evolution has one explanation: where we came from, we evolved, why we're here to survive, where we're going. When we die, we die. That's it. Yeah. Creation has another worldview. Where do we come from? God created us. Why are we here? To serve God and our fellow man. Where are we going? We have an afterlife and can look forward to going to heaven. And there are many scriptures which, of course, support that, and a few examples of the problem of evolution besides the ones I've mentioned, human evolution. This is a book written by Dr. Smith, and he did an excellent job showing that evolutionists are totally baffled at how sex could have evolved. You don't have reproduction until you have male that works, female that works, and this was Darwin's secret sex problem. Darwin could not figure out how we end up with sexual reproduction when we have one sex. Obviously, for asexual reproduction, it's easy. They just decide to divide, decide to produce another like themselves. But sexual reproduction has always been a major problem for evolution, still is today, and this man did an excellent job defending the fact that you won't get sex without creation because it's got to function, and we're talking about the whole system has to function, including delivery systems, the woman's pregnancy, carrying the child, etc. It doesn't work.
You know, we've talked about that before. It's so much more complicated to have, you have to get both the male and the female to evolve to the point where they can pass on their egg and their sperm. And how much easier is it, just like you said, for bacteria to divide? If evolution is what works, then why doesn't it just keep doing that? Why would it switch to something so much more complicated, so much more difficult, you know, trying to get a male and a female rather than just one asexual reproduction? And I love that topic because it really does show. And of course, the Bible says he made them male and female.
Yep, very clearly. Michael Roos, who I know and sat next to him in the bus for a couple of hours, and we talked about this, he wrote a book called Darwinism as Religion. And he points out very clearly that in many ways, strictly, Darwinism is a religion because it tells us where we came from, why we're here, and where we're going. Human evolution demolished. Clearly, the evidence is unequivocally against the idea that human evolution occurred. Well, why do people believe it? Well, again, because it is by law what's taught in the schools. It is by law what is taught in colleges, and therefore they're only exposed to one side. Yeah. In doing my writing, I read thousands of evolution books, not always the whole book, but sections that are relevant. And the authors clearly accept evolution as fact, but on the other hand, they admit over and over and over, yeah, it's true, but we can't figure out how indeed this occurred, that occurred, etc. The article I'm doing now, which I taught you about earlier, was on the tongue. How did we evolve the tongue? We cannot live in a terrestrial environment without a tongue. Fish, no problem. They open their mouth, they swim through the water, they can pick up their diet. We have to have a tongue. Therefore, to live on land, we have to have a tongue. How did we get a tongue? How did it evolve? Well, we're still trying to figure that out. And so they admitted in the references I utilized, which was about 40 references, and we have no idea how in the world we could have evolved a tongue. It had to occur, but we don't know why.
It reminds me of the scripture, they suppressed the truth in unrighteousness. Well, thank you again for being on the program, Jerry.
Thank you.
Hope you'll be on us again sometime.
I hope so.
The theory of evolution holds that human beings evolved from ape-like creatures over a long period of time. How do they account for the almost 500 million genetic differences? Mutations. Random accidental flaws in the gene pool are supposed to turn monkeys into men. This is what passes for science today. Yet we saw today that genetic mutations are almost always bad and harmful to an organism. They cannot turn an ape into a man. It just goes to show you that we know what the Bible says is true, and the proof, it's all around you. If you enjoy Origins, we sure could use your help to keep this creation television program on the air. Your support, both prayerfully and financially, make a big impact. So let's work together to reveal how awesome our Creator truly is. And we'll see you next time right here on Origins.
Thank you for watching this edition of Origins. For a DVD of this series, you can order online or send a $12 donation to cover shipping and handling and write to Origins Program number 2501, Cornerstone Network, Wall, Pennsylvania, 15148.
This presentation was made possible by the faithful prayers and financial support of you, our Cornerstone family.